Hey everybody, I was thinking about my last video and I decided to continue the literature theme because I couldn't think of much else to do today. But instead of just doing regular book reviews, I decided to take it in a slightly different direction. I want to use this video to clue you all in on books that were important to me growing up. This is a really truncated list, and I hope you're all aware of that. There were just some books that I could find and think of that were really important to me growing up. But if I were to list every book that meant something to me growing up, we would be here for days. So maybe this way you guys will get some good suggestions for reading books that you haven't heard of, and you get to learn more about me, which everyone wants to know, right? First off, The Hobbit and the subsequent Lord of the Rings trilogy. The Hobbit and the trilogy together took me years to read because I would start and stop and read books in between, which is one of the reasons why it was so significant to me, because it was a part of my life for so long. These books also introduced me to the concept of this sweeping epic that spans so much space and time and takes place in a world so fully thought out that other books have been written about its history, like the Silmarillion. This definitely sparked in me an interest not only in high fantasy, but in developing a fully fleshed out world that is, in a way, more interesting than many of the characters who take part in it, something that I do use in a lot of stories I write. Next would be Five Children and It by Edith Nesbit. This book, and the others written by E. Nesbit, like The Phoenix and the Carpet, The Enchanted Castle, Wet Magic, they all introduced me to whimsy in a way that I hadn't yet read. These stories are very British and very much for children. In fact, I would go so far as to say they are some of the best children's literature out there. Five Children and It is a classic story about 5 kids who find a fairy who grants them one wish a day that lasts for the length of the day, and chapter after chapter is just full of these kids wishing for something and then learning lessons when it doesn't work out as planned, and it's classic. It's such a common motif that she does so well. So even if you're an adult, I highly recommend you go out and read anything by E. Nesbit. This next one's kind of embarrassing to admit, but it was important to me growing up, and I feel like I should mention it. So, Ella Enchanted. A movie called Ella Enchanted, based on the book with Anne Hathaway, came out a couple years ago, but don't judge this based on that. They're very different in terms of plot and character and tone. Really, the only thing that's the same is the character of Ella and the main conceit. That conceit, for those of you who don't know, is that at birth, Ella was gifted by a fairy with the gift of obedience, which means that she has to do whatever anyone asks of her. But in classic fairy tale fashion, she loses her mother and has to get a stepmother. She falls in love with the prince, but the prince's evil uncle wants to use her gift to get him out of the way. It's all very good and classic. And the whole internal drama with her trying to fight against this curse is written so well. And by the end, you realize that this is the story of Cinderella. That definitely got me interested in the whole concept of taking a well-worn story like Cinderella and adding an element or twisting it or even telling it from a different perspective. And that really lets you use something the reader knows, but then use it to tell them something else that would have been harder to do otherwise. And that's definitely something I enjoy reading and writing. And that brings us to the last book I'm going to talk about in this video, The Ear, the Eye, and the Arm. I think I've read this book more times than I have any other book ever. It's been so important to me my entire life. It takes place in Zimbabwe in the year 2194, and it's about the children of this general who escape from his well-guarded, good home and explore the city around them that's full of corruption and gangs, and the most fascinating people I've met in literature. There's the elephant woman, who's not actually an elephant woman. She leads a colony of gray-skinned people who live in a dump mining plastic to sell because that's a rare thing in the future. She kidnaps the children and forces them to work there, and it's just one of the first steps of their journey, but still one of the most interesting ones. And of course, there's the Ear, the Eye, and the Arm themselves, who are these private detectives hired to find the children. They were born in an area of radioactive contamination, and they were each born with super hearing, super sight, and being really tall / empathic for some reason. But they're wonderful characters. The plot ends up combining elements of sci-fi, of African religion, history, and culture. There's even a glossary at the back filling you in on these words. There's crazy cults and human sacrifice and gangs and street warfare. This book introduced me to noir and pulp fiction elements and African mythology, and how many books can say that? Plus, it had concepts and themes that I still use in many stories that I write today, like cults, and human sacrifice, and empathy, and conflicting ideas of traditions. So yeah, everyone should go read that. It's not really well known from what I've heard from talking about it with people, but I think it should be well known. It's so important, maybe just to me, but give it a try. You might like it. So those are some books that influenced me. If you have any you want to talk about, comment below and let me know, because I love getting new reading material. See you later.